Down to the basement. There we go.
The first car you see is a Mini. Probably be better if I put the lights on.
Wow. Let there be lights. Wow, look at this.
So this assemblage here with the yellow Mini and the red smart car behind it are cars that somebody drove home and they're waiting to be detailed.
That's a smart car, huh?
Yeah, when Smart first came to America, they actually made a really cool Roadster. Unfortunately, when they designed the car, they didn't go with the tried and true transmission. They made up their own, is my understanding, and almost all of them had to be replaced under warranty, sometimes twice. So that killed the Roadster. But this one's a Brabus edition. It has bigger brakes, bigger tires and wheels. They're still three-lug wheels. Wow. I know, I love it. It's like a three-cylinder 1.3 liter, but it makes all the right sounds because the exhaust pipes are nice and short, and it's a cool convertible. You can either push a button and this thing zigzags and disappears down, or you can, and then you have these bars, or you can take these out and stash them up front.
Neat, yeah.
But I drove this for a weekend last year and couldn't decide if I liked it or not because it's very slow. So I took it the next weekend and came to the conclusion I like it.
Made by Bravus?
It's made by Smart, believe it or not, the same company that makes those things.
Okay, where are they? They're in this country?
Germany. Germany.
Germany.
Brabus is the tuning division of Mercedes and Smart.
Oh, right, the smart car, sure. I knew about that, I just forgot.
This car, when I drove this, they had me drive it to another museum in Nashville. It's a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 6, Tommy Mackinnon edition. And it's an amalgamation car. So to amalgamate a car means the manufacturer has to produce 200 or 250 of them.
Okay.
And that way they can show it's a production car so that they can race one of those 250 or 10 of them, whatever. So this is essentially a race car that has a CD player and regular safety belts, and yet it's screamingly fast, has a gigantic turbo. It's all been blueprinted, bigger wheels and tires, functional rear spoiler. So when I drove this to that other museum that I mentioned, all these kids, young men, were like taking pictures of the car. And like I said upstairs, I drive a lot of stuff from here, and people don't notice it, but everybody noticed this. And I later found out it's because it's a top-tier car in some video game, and all these video game kids were tripping on seeing one in real life because it's quite iconic for them. It rides like a buckboard, but it's fairly fast, and it makes all the right sounds.
Right. It is a neat car.
This one actually gets attention, this Fisker.
Oh, wow, look at that.
That's one.
Wow.
Somebody put it away dirty, surprisingly, because it gets driven all the time. It's got two 200 horsepower electric motors, one for each back tire, and it's a hybrid car, one of the first hybrid cars that was successful. It's got a little Ecotec engine that starts up at random, unless you put it in stealth mode, but it runs off the battery pack, which runs down the center of the car. Fisker went out of business, but recently a new company bought it, Chinese company, and so you'll be seeing new Fiskers on the road sometime soon. But interestingly, it's the size of an S-Class outside, but the interior is so small that the EPA has classified it as a small car.
That's interesting.
I'm going to sneak over here and turn on the rest of the lights.
There's so much to see, it's hard to even know where to focus.
If you ask Jeff Lane which his favorite car is here, it's Big Orange.
This one?
He spent a lot of time with it, and he just loves it. It's been rebuilt so many times that the engine displaces like twice as much as it originally did, so it's supposedly really fast and flies under the radar. Yeah. And you probably don't even have to lock it when you park it.
Right. Kind of like my truck.
Behind your dad is the Fiat Multipla. Doug DeMuro did a good video at our museum with this. He's done a bunch of videos here. Whenever you see a clickbait title, like what are the 3 ugliest cars of all time, the Fiat Multipla will be in it. And I recently came up with a name for this appendage. This is the Muffin Top.
Okay.
It's official. Heard it here first on Roller Derby. So I asked James why. I came down one day, the cars used to be like all the Volvos were together, all the Hondas were together.
Right.
And then I came down and I was surprised and shocked to see them all arranged by color, right?
Yeah.
And I asked him, James is the guy who's the collection manager, who I think he lives down here someplace. But he said, I said, why did you rearrange it by color? And he said, I just turned 60. And I think my brain's shutting down. Half the time I couldn't find the cars. So I arranged them by color. Now all I have to remember is what color it is. There's the car.
There you go.
Monopoly is making a Nashville edition.
Look at that.
And they're asking people to submit to their website what Nashville landmarks should have a space on the Monopoly board. And obviously we should have a big space, especially because we have this Monopoly car. It was made on a golf cart chassis for an AT&T commercial. And when they finished with it, they were just going to throw it out. One of the production assistants took it home. And ever since then, it's languished here in our museum. It's one of the ones we cannot drive because it's essentially a golf cart with a 2,000-pound fiberglass body on it. Does not move too well.
No, I don't imagine it does. And it's even neat stuff just hiding up here in the rafters.
Yeah, when I first got my privilege to drive the cars when I was working here, I kept asking to take the Lamborghini we had or the Porsche 911. And Chris, my boss, said, take the Volkswagen New Beetle convertible or the Nissan Figaro. And I'm like, what? Why? And he said, you're a single guy. If you take the VW or the Figaro, you might pull into a gas station and meet a girl. If you take the Lamborghini or the 911, you'll have a bunch of dudes videotaping you and wanting to talk about how you got the car.
Right.
Well, interestingly, the car that's attracted the most attention from people is that silver Fisker. People want to talk about that bizarre thing.
I believe it.
And I'm no longer single, so there's that. Cars didn't help in that regard. This is an interesting car. It's Amphibious. Twice a year, the Lane Museum invites members to go out on the lake and putt around in our 2 Amphibious cars.
No kidding.
And this is one of them.
Got the number on it.
It's a hobby car from Sweden. It's interesting. A lot of people notice they get you coming and going. It's got the Tennessee plates on it, but it also has the Tennessee water registration.
Right.
It's got an inboard propeller, so it's essentially jet drive, so you can get it up in the mud and stuff.
Oh, it's got 2 little jump seats in the back.
Yep, they're just like the front ones, so they're pretty big, and you can either have them facing backwards or forwards for fishing or watching a water skier, I guess, if you modified it. I don't think it could pull a skier as it is. But it's a concept prototype. The front windshield electrically raises and lowers.
I see that one's leaving a little gift on the floor.
If it's not, you know it's empty.
Did Colonel Clink ever drive this car?
That one, everybody that's driven it said it keeps up with modern traffic on the highway.
Looks like a Nazi staff car to me.
Yeah, it does. The Tatras upstairs had a funny story that has something to do with Nazis. They say that the Tatras killed more Nazi generals than the Allies did. And the reason being, in World War II, the Autobahns were created. And the Autobahns were huge straight runways that highways that could be used as runways, as you know. And at the exit ramps, they didn't really account for, banking. They thought people would be driving a typical 1940s car, which would go 30 miles an hour. But the Nazis got in the Tatras after they commandeered Czechoslovakia and tore down the Autobahns at 120 and took the exits and just, because Tatras are rear engine V8 cars with bias ply tires, and probably their speed and aerodynamics was far in excess of their chassis capability. So Justin, you're walking right past our American car, our one American car. No, actually, we have a couple or three, but that Model T came, I think 3 years ago, and it was a basket case.
Yeah.
The wheels, I didn't know they had wooden wheels, but since they were exploded and exposed, I learned that the wheels are wood, and as I told you, the wood shop upstairs does the wood parts. We do everything here except for the upholstery, so they probably made it better than it was in the first place.
Right.
That's my second favorite car to drive here. That thing's a blast. Lancia Delta Integrale HF. Has a bigger engine, blueprinted, bigger turbo, bigger wheels and tires, and it has the same transaxle rear end, so 50-50 weight as the red Alpha SC we talked about. And you can't upset this thing if you ever do get it sideways, which is a chore. It just gracefully glides a little bit sideways.
You notice something about the Model T? It's bigger than everything else here. Because Americans make bigger things.
Yeah, and they started early with that one too. This car used to belong to George Jones and Tammy Wynette. Some of the guys that work here who live over towards where George and Tammy live report this was their daily driver. And they'd see George or Tammy with their big hair driving it up or down Franklin Road, usually back and forth to the liquor store. You have to cut that part out. No, there's no libel if it is.
Late 1930s is my favorite design period.
Yeah, that's a beautiful car.
Anything from that era is beautiful. I don't know why we ever changed.
I know, you would think if they could make it back then, it would be simple to make it now. And now we get this abomination. I can't even look at it, it makes my face hurt. I'll have to cut that part out too. Nobody wants to see that thing.
A neat collection of bikes here.
Yeah, we have a Rotary Hercules. That's pretty cool. I think it's up here still. And before you leave, you can go outside to the gigantic
Oh, that's right.
Lark. You probably remember that from the first time you were here.
Yes. Well, that's interesting. I bet that thing will fly through some snow.
The Hercules bike is downstairs.
How often do you ride that?
I haven't ridden it, but I saw one guy that works here riding it one day inside the museum.
McLean wheel.
January 10, 2005.
I always pronounce it McLean in my head because it looks like you can lean on it pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. How many visitors do you get through here every year?
Recently, it's sometimes on the weekends as many as 400 people.
Okay.
So I don't know what the yearly attendance is, but on a very busy day, it's 400. So this guy, Gary Davis, who invented the Davis Baby, Jay Leno has a really good video on the Davis Divan. This one's called Baby because it was the first one and it's a prototype.
Oh, okay.
There's only 12 of them. Jay Leno doesn't even have one, but he drove one around from the Peterson collection in LA. And they're famous because Gary Davis was a showman, sort of some people thought he might have overstepped the bounds of the law. He had investors, he built a factory, he offered his workers to work for free for a year, and then after a year when he had a bunch of cars to sell, then he would pay them twice as much the next year. But the next year never came.
Oh, no.
So he was investigated. Some people think it was a conspiracy by the big three, but this car is pretty stunning.
I'd say.
And they're very valuable, like in the millions, because there's only 13 and everybody wants one. But it's funny, it has a Hercules engine, which is like a pump engine, you know, for agricultural irrigation.
Okay.
So it's meant to run at one speed all the time. And it's a three-wheeled thing. And behind it is a car that's on loan to us. That's Gary Davis's bid to win a military contract. And that's the only one of its kind. So it would probably be very valuable too. But I can just hear him going to the big wigs in the Army. It's like, look, you would only have to order 3/4 of how many tires
That's right.
you would otherwise need.
Cost savings.
It's a no-brainer, fellas. But there's some videos on YouTube of this thing being torture tested and run over these, you know, really striking bumps and clips and ravines and stuff. So it was pretty stout. It looks stout, and
It does.
not that I've touched it, but if I had, I would tell you that the metal seems like it's twice or 3 times as thick as it needs to be.
So, airplanes. I've seen some airplanes hanging throughout.
I think the airplane connection goes back to the propeller-powered car connection, and
Okay.
there's a fella named Marcel Leyat, L-E-Y-A-T, who was like the Chevrolet of propeller-powered cars. And I think he started, before he built land vehicles, with aircraft. And I don't think a lot of them survived, but we have a couple of Leyat vehicles here that are historically significant. And like I said, people didn't know if cars were going to end up having 3 tires or 4, and they didn't know if they were going to have to make a complex, heavy, hard-to-machine transmission, or just bolt a propeller to an old motorcycle engine and use that to get down the road.
This car here is very striking. It almost looks like an airplane fuselage on wheels.
Yeah, I don't know too much about it. I met the guy who built it. He's an old dude, and he was all happy because he brought it here to donate to the museum. And while he was here, he somehow heard about a Brickland show, and he was big into Bricklands, and so he bought and picked up a Brickland car, and he was just over the moon that he got this Brickland. He didn't even, it was like karma, you know?
Right. Just love that swooping line.
The Futura made out of a bunch of Corvairs, 3 I think. It's funny, I dusted this car and wiped the fingerprints off for like 6 months, and I thought the windows were tinted green, but as it turns out, everything inside is dyed green.
Yeah.
This ribbon wasn't in there, so everything just looked
I could,
uniform.
right, yeah,
chartreuse
without
color.
that ribbon in there, it definitely would look like green tinted windows.
But this one's famous from being on Wayne Carini's show and him getting it going and before it came to us.
And you have a giant toolbox on
Yeah,
this.
the rationale behind the Toolster, evidently Hot Wheels honors a bizarre vehicle every few years, and these people build full-size bizarre vehicles in a competition to get memorialized forever on Hot Wheels. And he got honorable mention, but they didn't make a toolbox shaped
car.
Hot Wheels car.
Yeah.
That is the engine too, it's a V8.
Yeah, I see that poking out of there.
We got the biggest collection of Tatras outside Czechoslovakia. Tatras are interesting, and one thing they seem to mostly have in common is they're air-cooled V8 in the back, like behind the back wheels.
Right.
All the way from 1938 to one from 1980s. That black car and the one maroon car behind it, those are modern Tatras, and they have a great big V8 engine behind the back wheels that's air-cooled. They sound like a helicopter when they're running.
Let's take it for a drive.
If Jeff was here, you could probably talk him into it. Like I said, one of the goals of the collection is to have them all operable, and more importantly, probably to share the collection with enthusiasts.
Right.
Spread the knowledge.
It's just fascinating. Like I was saying earlier, you know, Leon and I, our primary focus has been on Chevrolet. So it's really neat to include these vehicles into a video.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get some of your subscribers or other people that stumble onto your videos who had never heard of Lane, because so many people come in and say this place is so great, but I never heard of it. And it's this is how we advertise.
I was speaking with a gentleman in Florida yesterday and made mention that we were coming in, and he was very excited. He had actually heard of the Lane but had never been here. He's been wanting to make a journey here, make a trek.
And we have a surprising number of people come in and say they've lived in Nashville their whole life. They remember smelling the bread all the way to the interstate.
Right.
And then they've driven past here because we're on a very busy road just off the main interstate, and we're really just walking distance from downtown. And well, you wouldn't want to walk here, to be honest with you. But people say they've driven past for years and they're just now popping in. I've been wanting to come in for years. But we're also very close to the airport, so if anybody's flying in or out, we're 7 minutes from the airport at the worst of traffic.
A few years ago, my brother, who lives nearby, insisted that we come visit. I'm glad we did.
Yeah, where is that wanker?
I don't know, he's here somewhere.
Oh, okay.
I saw him floating around.
Back in that corner is some stuff that you really want to see. The one of one.
Okay.
When I told Rebecca that all the stuff that I like to talk about on the tours is upstairs. So now I've reverted to telling people stories of the cars I've driven from the collection, which are mostly downstairs. And people seem to get a kick out of that. There's 160 or so cars up here, and there's 300 or so downstairs that are all crammed in for storage that we rotate out with up here.
I found my brother. Hello, brother.
This Gregory is a one-of-a-kind car. It's front-wheel drive, I just learned. On our Facebook page, they posted a little blurb about it today. And look at the paint on that thing.
Yeah.
They just finished painting it. It's either orange or Oello.
So does the restoration work take place here, or is it farmed?
Yep. Back in that corner, there's a wood shop. Like we got, there's a wood car, there's a wood car. We've got a Model T that came in a basket case. Model Ts have a lot of frame parts that are wood, and they also have wheels that are made out of wood, which I didn't know. People used to park their Model Ts in the river or the pond to keep the wood swole up so that it would handle better.
That's a new fact. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I just learned that myself. I think it was on Autopian, Rex's website, the guy that is our education director. You'll meet him on the way out.
So,
but yeah, the wood shop's back there.
Okay.
And you can see underneath that British flag where the lights are, that's the restoration shop. There's a full metal shop, sheet metal brakes and English wheels to bend the metal. There's an inflatable paint booth back there. There's a full machine shop. And then beyond that, where you can't see, there's a couple of automotive lifts to get 2 cars up in the air.
Right.
And room for about 6 cars inside.
Now, as the collection grows, do things go away, or does the collection just grow?
Yeah, for the first time, they recently had the decision, the board of directors, to sell off 6 or 8 cars. So there is a little section on our website, cars that are for sale.
So folks can go there and check it out.
Yep.
I think you mentioned you guys have a YouTube channel? Or
Yes,
just
it's not real
page?
active, but
okay. Well, everybody, you need
all
to
the
go.
videos that are playing in here that inform you about the cars are playing on the YouTube channel.
After you subscribe to the FNK channel, go over to the lane and subscribe to them. There's a lot of neat stuff in here.
This car was built by this guy, Toli Aruntanov, Anatoly Aruntanov.
Okay.
Goes by Toli.
Tell
And
them.
I think he's like 85 or 90 now, but I remember when I was a kid reading Car and Driver, I'd love to read his stuff because he was a little less than serious and a little bit of a smart aleck.
Okay.
And his stuff was just interesting. Well, I messaged him on Facebook on a whim the other day because I wanted to see how old he was.
Right.
And there's very little info. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page, believe it or not. The dude's so famous in the automotive world. But, and he answered. I said that they won't let me take this car home, even though we are encouraged to keep the collection on the road.
Right.
Because this is a one-of-one. And he said, you wouldn't want to drive that thing anyway. It's never been more than 150 feet under its own power. And it's never been over 10 miles an hour. So almost like he built it as a joke or a whim. Yeah, it's completely cloth covered. It's powered by a V8. So interesting handling, I'm sure. Cloth hubcaps. I mean,
fuel cells?
Totally.
Okay. One's coolant. I guess this is coolant here, and this must be a fuel cell. I can't even tell. Yeah, there's a fuel line, there's lines running out of the bottom of each one.
These are obviously rocket boosters, Justin.
right, obviously. This is a neat piece. I like this.
So these cars are by a guy named Charles Martin.
Okay.
And in 1925, I think, Martin designed this safety car. He was an aircraft engineer. And if you notice, it's very aircraft-like in that it's only got one door. So the pilot, as it were, has to come in and work his way up and sit here.
Now there's the
He
door.
was trying to get investors. So in 28, he came up with this family car. Okay, this one's a 1932 that he designed and built. And it
Okay.
has a Harley Davidson, like war surplus motorcycle thing.
Oh, okay.
Like the rear half, and when you steer it, the whole rear, the
Swings.
engine and everything turns because
Okay.
it's the back half of a motorcycle. And this one was, he built, I think in 1950, it was the last thing that he built. Yeah, 1950, Martin Stationette. But there's a funny video of Jason Torchinsky from Jalopnik driving this thing. And I came in, and first thing we do is walk around and unlock and the fire exits and turn the lights on. And I didn't know he was already here. And I walked out that motorcycle tunnel, which overlooks the back parking lot.
Right.
And here's this little Martin Stationette, which I thought of as, you know, priceless history, whipping around the circle. It turns out he was filming his little talkie parts where he's driving,
Right.
and he was doing it in the back parking lot. But it just looked like God playing with his toy car
Toy.
collection. It was so cute. So the Gyro X is fascinating. You could do a whole video on that. It is so perfect. And when we got it, some dude had been using it for target practice.
What?
It had holes in it, and there wasn't a straight panel on it anywhere.
Seems like an odd thing for target practice.
It balances on two wheels. Once this gyroscope starts going, it's like a motorcycle. When you're riding down the highway, it wants to stay upright.
Okay.
So that thing spins, and if it leans a little bit, the cables adjust the gyroscope's angle to counteract that. And it's so bizarre. It sounds kind of like a real quiet lawnmower when it's sitting still and balancing on its two tires. But you can't push it over. It pushes back. It feels like it's in concrete. And then you look down and see those outriggers, and those outriggers are only when it's turned off. When you turn it on, those get pulled up and it's balanced on two tires.
What powers this? Is this like a motorcycle engine?
Yeah, it's got an industrial engine. The gyroscope is hydraulically actuated, so it's got a hydraulic pump that spins that. Water-cooled 1275cc transverse inline 4 of 80 horsepower. So in case I didn't say it, all the cars have a page on Lane's website where it'll have the same information that's on the little sign, and usually a picture in the under the hood and a picture in the interior. And so if there's anything you see in the background, go to Lane's website and just start typing in the search box gyroscopic car, and this will pop up along with 2 other gyroscopic cars that we have.
Well, thanks for joining us today. That was a great tour. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
There's a lot of neat stuff down there and up here.
2 hours is barely enough time to get through everything here,
Right.
but we did most of it.
It was good to meet you.
Great to meet you,
I hope you
Justin.
get back here one day. We'll bring Leon with us.
Yeah,
Leon missed the
please do.
video, but he's here with us in spirit. So thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. We're getting very close to 1,000 subscribers. Really appreciate it. Please check out the Lane Motor Museum. Tom, thanks again.
You're welcome, Justin.
We'll definitely be back.
Come back to Nashville.
See you later.